Well, it's my pleasure to introduce our next presenter then on teleworking, the electronic signatures, online applications, virtual meetings, and virtual interviews for new positions, recorded webinars, and training videos. And our next presenter is Byron from the Maryland Department of Agriculture. So Byron, let's do a mic check and see if everything's working well for you today.
How am I sounding?
You're sounding great.
All right, loud and
Looking
clear.
even better.
Well, that's a mouthful there in the title. I'm really, I guess, want to mostly focus on some of the personnel changes, in particular, the recruitment, work schedules, and training delivery. But let me start. Looks like I have a lag.
Probably you'll have to point it your cursor at the screen and hit. Yeah, there you go. Now you got it.
There we go. Well, just a little background information real quick on us. I think we're fairly unique in that we have significant state resources in all of our soil conservation district offices. So there's just a background of we're actually in the Office of Resource Conservation at MDA, and there's our website if anybody's interested to learn more about us here in Maryland. In particular, I manage the district operations program where we provide state resources to 24 soil conservation districts. We actually have 23 counties in the state, which all have a district, and Frederick County actually has 2 districts, which they are in discussing about merging those 2 districts. So that'll be unique for us in our 75+ year history here. But for us, we heavily significant resources and programs are dedicated to meeting our watershed implementation plan to help clean up the Chesapeake Bay. And just an idea of we are fortunate to have state programs along with our federal programs here in Maryland. Cover crop is a huge program for us, about $23 million a year. And then we have other, our MAX program, capital, similar equip, and some other. I think we have probably 3 or 4 RCPP projects that are currently underway in the state now as well. But what I wanted to point out, I guess, is we have about 141 state employees that work. Mostly about 90% of them work in the district provide technical assistance, either conservation planners or technicians. And they're located again throughout the state. We have 28 offices that we manage, mostly the soil conservation district offices that they're located in. And a couple things I wanted to point out that we were very fortunate ahead of COVID that we started to transition all our staff to laptops, which was a very easy transition when we went to mandatory telework. We were ready to go. And it wasn't a big of an issue as some of the other programs here at MDA. The other thing that has been a benefit for us is supplying iPads at all our district offices. That's allowed us some mobility and even some signature mobility that I'll talk about later. And really, years past, I'll point out, I don't know if others have had this issue, just the security issues of getting a token that you could take your laptop home and doing the VPN. It was much more stringent in years past. So both on the NRCS network and then our state network, much easier to access your files and everything remotely as well. So the equipment, investing in equipment was very important for us to move into telework mode. So for us, prior to COVID, I have 5 there, but really I think one of those 5 had a formal telework agreement. So pretty much teleworking was non-existent for us in our field offices. And then we went to 100% telework for COVID. And now we're, as we're coming out of that, we're going to probably get up to about half of our workforce is teleworking. And one thing I will point out as well, what has been popular for our field office is a compressed work week. So that's where they're working maybe 4 10-hour days and have a Friday off. So that was popular. Now we will continue that, and then we will also be doing the teleworking as well. So some of the concerns is, as we were pushing out of COVID, we had a lot of our district managers asking us, can we go back to the old way? I want a warm body sitting in that desk chair and waiting for a farmer to come in and, ask them a question. And with us being a state agency, obviously we have rules, and the rest of our state agencies were moving to continue teleworking. So we had a new telework agreement that we moved us into the post-pandemic. So some of the other concerns that we heard from the field offices was is everybody going to be eligible to telework? So they knew who was productive while we were 100% telework, and some were productive and some weren't. So is everybody eligible? Is the field work going to suffer? Obviously there's considerable field work in our district offices. Is that going to suffer? And just overall scheduling office coverage. They, like, this is going to be a nightmare. I don't know who's in the office that day or not. So we tried to come up with some policies and procedures to help guide, some of these concerns, or help to address some of these concerns. So the first is, it is a privilege to work. It's not a right to telework. So first off, anybody on probation that comes new to us, they're not eligible for telework until they satisfy their probational period. And then after that, it's an assessment between the supervisors, the local supervisor as well as state supervision, of whether that person, could still perform their duties while teleworking. So that is a discussion that occurs, and then, even before if they're eligible or not. So the big one that we continue to emphasize in anything we do is that field work will not be affected. So if there's a construction check, there's a, construction, concrete poured, and you need to be on site to be there. It doesn't matter, you're teleworking. You need to be there on site. And if a farmer can meet only on your telework day, where so we constantly emphasize that, if it's affected in any way, then we'll go off of telework. The other one was establishing a consistent schedule. So we can only do 2 telework days a week, and then we want those to be on the same day of each week, just so there's that consistency of scheduling. The district manager know is available, on any given day. So to be eligible to teleworking, the employee first has to go through, review our telework policy. Like I said, the state updated it as we're going through. It's a post-pandemic telework policy, and then they sign an agreement form there. And then what I'll touch on is this performance metrics. So each program had to develop metrics for when that person was teleworking. And then we had to review their position description. This is their job duties and expectations of the job, and just make sure that fit with, when they were teleworking still. So those were 3 components to be eligible. And then if they are starting to telework, what we require is weekly filling out a workbook, and then submitting it to their supervisor when they submit their timesheet on a bi-weekly basis. So each of those categories there, those are just different tabs in the workbook, and hopefully that captures the information or what they would be working on while they were teleworking. So they would put that in each of the, they would list that in each of the tabs on their workbook, and then submit that to their supervisors. And that was a record of what they worked on. And we tried to make it where I didn't want to know when somebody was using the bathroom, taking time to away, but we tried to get it in such a way to, be enough to capture what they were working on while they're home, but not spend half the day, filling out a timesheet. So it's worked well up to this point, and I think we've hopefully struck a balance between, accountability and not be just a over tiresome task to fill it out. This is pretty small, but if anybody's interested in this, I just wanted to touch on, this is really the meat of what is followed by each of the classifications. So this is for our conservation planner. And what we did is, these are the performance metrics. We defined what the communication plan was. So what's the expectation to return phone calls, answer emails, that kind of thing. And then the real bulk of it is we identified parts of their job that we felt they could still perform at home. And they would define what they would list out for each of those. And you'll see it's counterintuitive, field visits. Well, how are you doing field visits between telework? But like I said, we purposely re-emphasize this every time, that field visits will not suffer. So we had that as a work objective for this one. you can see just, any of these pretty much, you would capture what you were working on and then how many hours of the day, you were performing each of those. And then the biggest thing too is just accountability supervisors. Really, this boils down to being available. You can't go home and not be available. If somebody's calling you, you can't go AWOL on us. We always say just treat it as if your supervisor's coming down to your cubicle to to ask you a question. It'd be the same thing. How are they going to be available to you? So just re-emphasizing that. And here's another one, just similar for our technician series, if it wants to work. There we go. So very similar, but we have each one of these for specific to each job classification. So just two examples of ones that we had for our field staff. So we were fortunate and maybe unfortunate, right prior to COVID, we had a significant increase in our workforce. We had 50 new positions that came to us. And so the unfortunate thing is we had to try to recruit while we were all working virtually and couldn't have in-person interviews. So we decided to move forward with doing virtual interviews, and we conducted those through Google Meets. And what we would do is we would have hour blocks, for the interview, and for each hour we'd send a separate invite to the interviewee and the panel themselves. And that worked very well. We did up to about 175 interviews through 9 recruitments. And we're actually looking to continue, and I have 80 applicants, but I think we're up to 110 applicants that we'll be doing here shortly. So we'll be doing about 300 interviews through virtual. And up to this point, I just can't tell you how surprised and pleased I am that we've had no real technology issues. There's only been really a handful that the cameras wouldn't work, but they were still able to call in. So I feel like we were still very productive in the virtual, and really where we focus this on is our entry level. So for our entry level, we have a big statewide recruitment. So we create an eligible list. And so for our upper management, we've done in person still. And so with our in-person interviews, one thing that we like is we actually print out the interview question on one per page, and they're able to follow along as we read the question and refer back to it. I haven't really found a way to display that on the virtual because I don't want anybody to screen capture our interview questions and have them to spread around. So that's a couple of the negatives, but I just couldn't tell you how pleasantly surprised I was that how well this has worked. I'll touch on same thing as we've been trying to onboard, and so much of our KSAs are centered around on-the-job training. How do you perform that OJT when nobody's in the office, or when there's so many people teleworking, not only our staff but even the NRCS staff. So we started looking at just pretty much recording anything that we do now. We just went through an orientation with our partners. It was a 5-week orientation, and just one day per each week, but we recorded every speaker, and that's all available. We created some virtual farm tours, and those are available. We have a CAD user group. So pretty much this Maryland Association of Soil Conservation District website is a clearinghouse for all the partnership to share their training resources and videos. So we've created video series. We're highlighting not only farmers, but district staff and the partnerships that are out there. So take a look. There's the website. I encourage anybody to, certainly visit that. And if you share any information, anything that y'all are doing as well, please reach out to me. But this will be ongoing. This is just a start for us as a partnership, just to, like I said, share all the information, and that will continue to grow. And then the last thing is just, I guess, replacing wet signatures or original signatures. So we've really started to use the DocuSign feature. And when we're sharing documents and we're moving around our agreements that have to be circulating, our agreements that have to sign. The DocuSign has been really, it's a great function for everybody. The other thing, what I touched on before, was the iPads. So the iPad feature, we have some web tools, like our cover crop program is on the web. So we're able to actually go out to farmers. They can sign on the iPad. We have the pens they can sign with. Some of our laptops have the touch screen, so we're able to do signatures there as well. But one of the things I thought has been interesting for me is the acceptance of a scanned image of your signature. So before, like our human resources and our physical services, everything had to be original signature. And now I can scan my signature, put it on a PDF, print that out, and send that over to them, and they accept that now. So that has been real interesting to see, like we said, as we're transitioning to a newer world, what's acceptable now. So as a department, though, we've also been exploring online applications for some of our state programs. And then for us, there's about 5,200 farmers that have to submit an annual implementation report for nutrient management every year. And we've created an online application for them as an option as well. So I think that's been 2 years now. And it continues to grow. I don't have the percentages, but I know last year it increased from the initial year 2 years ago. So I know it's a quick, hopefully 10 minutes, and
That's outstanding, Byron. Thank you so much. And you covered so many different topics there that I think your email address is probably going to light up here a little bit from these folks that are joining us today with questions, and probably desire to have copies of those telework policies, some of those job descriptions you had, your process for interviews, this last item that you covered with your work with the association, right? Your partnership with the association to sponsor websites. And then also, your online, that wet signature replacement, right? With other ways to sign documents and apply for things. Well, let's start with you with our questions and answers. Do you think, Byron, over time, and you gain more trust in your employees, that you would consider giving even your telework policy some additional flexibility than it has presently?
I believe so. I think we've talked about increasing the amount of telework days, but we're still there's always going to be that balance of how do you. I think there has been a mindset that farmers know that they might have to make appointments. They don't do the cold calls where they're out and about and they just stop in. So I think we'll continue to see that mindset of just not so many people coming to the district offices. So I think we could probably go to more days of teleworking and still have office coverage, just because the foot traffic is not coming through like we used to see in the past. So I think there is probably a possibility to maybe increase the number of telework days. And really, in our last recruitments we did, this is another thing that we have to be concerned with for the way the job market is. Pretty much everybody that came to the interview asked us about the possibility of teleworking. So it's in the mindset of the new employees, that are out there in the workforce coming in. And it is an option that we, need to be thinking about it as, the total job, employee package that we're able to offer and recruit and retain employees. So yeah, if we can increase that, I think, and still be productive, I'm all for it.
Outstanding. And thank you for that.